My name's Missy, and I am a recovering alcoholic and a survivor of abuse. I was born in York in 1984. My mom and my dad were together for the first 12 years of my life, and I was kind of brought up that alcohol was the solution to anything. If you were upset, drink. If you were angry, you drink. If you're celebrating, you drink. And for a while, I knew what they were doing, but I didn't understand that it was an issue. My dad is a severe alcoholic, and so I grew up with a kegerator in the house with road beers, so he would drink in the car, and I didn't know that any of those things were not common. I didn't know that they were unusual things until I was about in middle school. And when I realized that, I was totally turned off from it, thought it was terrible, saw some of my friends were experimenting, and I was like, I'm not gonna do that. And then came basically the destruction of what I had already known. My parents split up, and my dad at that time was hitting my mom, very verbally abusive, and I was seeing a lot of it. I was trying to make sure that my brother, who is a few years younger than me, didn't know what was going on, so I kind of got the brunt of the emotional impact from it. And so when my parents split up, my dad cheated on my mom and wanted us out of the house and wanted us to kind of go away. I was angry, and not so much about the divorce. I was happy about that because I didn't want to be in that area of conflict anymore, but because of everything that went on with it. And so when I was in ninth grade, I was at a party with some juniors and seniors, and I drank for the first time. And I had 9 shots of vodka, and it was the best time of my life. It was just this, and you hear about people saying that with alcohol, you're like, this is the thing I've been missing. This is it. And it was 100% that. I just had never felt so likable, so free, so just not having to deal with the burdens that I always had. And essentially, for the next 15 years, I spiraled into severe alcoholism. High school, 100%. Sometimes before school, definitely after school and the weekends, trying to hide stuff, but not always great at it. And then I went to Penn State, which, notorious party school. I definitely helped that image, that you would say, between tailgating and just everything else. But I was doing it for a different reason than everyone else. People were doing it to celebrate a game or because it was their birthday, and mine was almost to function. I had this deep opinion of myself, this deep image that I was not good enough. When I was growing up, and like I said, my dad was an alcoholic, he was not kind. I was, for lack of a better word, worthless. I was a female, so I was inferior. I was never going to be as good as a man. And it didn't really matter what I did or how much I tried, I was less than. So between watching my mom and then between him becoming abusive to me when I was a teenager, mentally and physically, I needed something to medicate. I needed something to dull the pain. And I think it was The Simpsons. I think Homer Simpson said, we should drink until we can't feel feelings anymore. And that was me. That was what I was doing. I couldn't deal with things. And so then you do all this terrible stuff and you drink to try to forget that. So I've been sexually assaulted. I've gotten in fights almost exclusively with men. And I think that's probably because of my experience with my dad. I have had my identity stolen. I've gotten a DUI at almost 4 times the legal limit. And eventually I was forced for my job to go to rehab. They basically said, you're done if you cannot get it together. And so I had tried to get sober probably 5 or 6 times before. And if I would make it 4 days, that was always my record. If I can make it 4 days, I'm good. I'm not an alcoholic. And then that 4th day, I would drink 2/5 of vodka. And that was basically what I did for, I would say, the last 7 years. One night would be at least 1/5 of vodka, probably. The next night, maybe 3 bottles of wine. The next night, 10 IPAs. And I didn't drink the, Miller Lite. If I'm going to drink, I want it to be at least 10% alcohol because otherwise it's a waste of my time. So I was basically living either hungover or intoxicated. There was no in between for me. And that was really rough. Obviously took a toll on me physically, but emotionally I was feeding into this image that I'm still less than. And I think part of it, I heard before that we don't do anything for no reason, that we always are getting something out of it. I think I wanted to be miserable because I felt like that's how the world saw me, so I might as well be. And I'm not sure if that makes sense, but there was just this deep self-hatred that I had, and alcohol was the only thing that could mask it. When I went to rehab, I was horrified because I had to not drink. We played Pictionary one night, and I had a anxiety attack like you would not believe because I had to go up and draw something sober, and I had not done that in a very long time. I had any attention on me unless I was drunk. And in rehab, people started saying to me, wow, we can tell already that you're different. You're not crying every 12 seconds. And yes, I was still throwing up every couple hours and going through the regular withdrawal stuff, but they would say you just seem a little bit more at ease. And I wouldn't say I necessarily was, but it was the first time in a very long time where I felt like someone understood me. And I felt like I was in a group of my peers, I guess, that people that had been through the same thing as me, and I wasn't the bad one or the one that wasn't worthy. So after my rehab stint, my inpatient, I did 6 months of intensive outpatient rehab, and that is what has kept me sober. Learning some of my triggers, learning what it is that made me self-medicate with alcohol and how to kind of change those thoughts in my brain before it gets too bad and before I drink. As an alcoholic, there is a part of my brain that says you need to drink. You need to do this in order to survive. And you have to learn that that part is lying to you. And that's a very strange thing when your brain kind of goes against what you should be doing, if that makes sense. And so the first year of my sobriety was hell. They say white knuckling it. I guess that would be one way to say it. It was just this constant in my head over and over again. You should be drinking. You should be drinking. You are terrible. Nobody is going to love you when you're sober because you're just the worst, basically. And throughout the last couple of years, I'm now 4 years sober, it gets easier. But the main thing that keeps me sober, and this is silly, I have an app on my phone, and it's the 12 Steps app, and it has a count up instead of a countdown. And it actually says the months, the years, the days, and the hours that I've been sober. And at first, those hours as they would go up were so helpful because I could say, okay, I've already done this 628 hours. I can do this next one. And now I'm at over 4 years, and I don't ever want to go back down to the zero. I've heard people say before that I have another relapse in me, but I don't think I have another recovery. I've had a lot of relapses, but I don't know if I have another recovery, and I know I don't want to go through that again. That was the worst thing that hopefully I'll ever go through, physically and emotionally. At this point, I'm still very much so at battle with myself, I guess. If I am less than, if I am good enough. And part of that is because of all the things that I did when I was drinking. And part of it is because my father is still abusive, not physically, but very much so mentally and very manipulative. And I still feel this unwavering loyalty to him, which apparently is something that children of alcoholics very much so do. But watching him and seeing the way he is right now at the end of his life is also really helpful to let me know what I don't want to do and where I don't want to be. And I'm just going to take it, as they say, it's super cliche, but day by day.